Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Wright. I'm the education specialist for the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight and joining us for our final movie discussion night of 2022. Before we get started, though, I just want to say that this event is sponsored by the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation with support for the foundation in memory of Pat Finley. So we would like to thank the Finley family and the foundation for their continued support. I was running numbers today on our virtual programming for 2022. Just about 1,000 people joining us for all of our virtual programs in 2022, with 51 virtual programs being offered. So those are good numbers. We'd like to see them go up in 2023, but I'm satisfied with having that for 2022. And of course, movie night is always one of my favorites. And tonight we are looking at the 2008 Christmas hit. This movie just screams Christmas, doesn't it? The Hurt Locker. Of course, I'm being very sarcastic there. I don't think there's a blink of Christmas anywhere in this movie. And as far as I know, I think we've exhausted our Christmas war movies over the past couple years. I'm still looking for more, so maybe in 2023 I'll come up with a new one. But The Hurt Locker, 2008, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. You might remember her from Point Break and Zero Dark 30 as well. Screenplay for this was written by Mark Bold, and he had worked with Kathryn Bigelow before on Zero Dark 30. And he was actually not originally a Hollywood guy. He was a newspaper a man initially. And this movie is based on his account of being embedded with an EOD team in 2004. And that article originally was published in Playboy magazine, and it was called The Man in the Bomb Suit. So that's where he really got the idea for this screenplay, approached Kathryn Bigelow about it. She initially did not want to do this film, but her husband, James Cameron of Avatar fame, ex-husband actually, decided he really encouraged her to do it, and it worked out really well. And we'll talk about the awards and accolades it received in just a minute. Cinematography for this film was done by Barry Ackroyd. Of course, this film stars Jeremy Renner, Evangeline Lilly, Anthony Mackie, Ray Fiennes, and a whole bunch of other small cameo roles, which we'll talk about as well. This was filmed primarily in Jordan, right near the Iraq border. So it was a little iffy sometimes, and certainly hot. They were talking about how temperatures were constantly exceeding 100 degrees throughout the filming of this. This was produced by Voltage Pictures, distributed by Summit Entertainment. It was released at the Venice Film Festival in September of 2008, but it wasn't released here in the US until June of 2009. It did have a budget of $15 million, box office receipts totaling almost $50 million. So a whopping profit on this film. It was originally supposed to be very low budget, shot low budget, but Kathryn Bigelow does amazing things with her film and with her work. And she really turned this into the blockbuster that it was. Speaking of blockbusters, it was not, can't even use my words tonight. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, to include Best Actor, Best Cinematography, and Best Score. It did win 6 Academy Awards: Best Director, Best Editing, Best Picture, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Screenplay. So for a low budget film to come away with 9 nods and 6 awards, and almost tripling, or no, more than tripling its budget, I'd say this is a successful movie. As usual, I'm just going to go around real quick and get everybody's impressions of the film. Sally, you're the first one on my screen here as I'm moving from left to right. So what did you think of it? No, you're muted, Sally. Sorry. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Every week I go through this. Overall, it was a little much for me. I thought it was constant, stressful for me to watch, because I can't imagine them hot and sweaty. And I looked something up and it said the helmet alone was 60 pounds that the debalmer had to wear. And then his suit and everything was around 60 to 100. I can't imagine walking in that hot, oppressive heat, and then firing guns, and just the whole psychological trauma. I wouldn't watch it again. I only watched it the second time because we were discussing it, but It's not something I'll watch again.
All right. Chris, how about you?
Well, I really liked it. I saw it in the theater when it first came out. And so this was a good reminder of it. There was one sequence that I thought could have been omitted, but for me, the tension was the heart of it. That's what really made the movie. And I understand Sally's point. I think I mentioned last session that my wife and I have this category of films, best movies we'd never like to watch again because they're so emotionally draining. And I suspect for some people that Hurt Locker would be one of those.
All right. Travis, how did you feel about the film?
Hated it.
Hated it. Okay.
I lived interaction in that during time period, and I actually hated how it portrayed the bomb tech, and it was way over the top, especially getting out of the wire off the base like that and getting back in. BS. Complete BS.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of critics of the film, you know, for as much as it did receive accolades, a lot of critics of the film had that same thought about it. And certainly I noticed a lot of things in there that just really didn't they didn't jive with me as well. And we'll talk about that as we go through.
I mean, I'll be real quick on that. I agree that part was my hang up. I mean, overall, it's a movie. You're supposed to suspend reality. I get that. So on that note, it was okay. It was decent. But as far as the rest of the stuff, it just was a miss for me.
Yeah, and maybe that's, you know, maybe as veterans, we take that approach to not just films, but books and just life in general. And we really do nitpick a little bit, I think. I know I do.
We do,
and
yes.
So when you see something like this, you know, and like I said, there's things that we'll talk about as we go through tonight, but there's was just a lot in there that I was just like, okay, come on, get out of here.
Right.
I just, if I could add, that sequence that Travis was talking about is the thing that I was talking about when I was speaking that I thought could have been omitted.
And sorry, which part was that, Chris?
The thing where he goes out to the doctor's house to find out about Beckham, and then comes back and has to get in, and they go through that whole sequence there. That was the part that I thought I didn't think that added to the film.
No, and I agree. I don't think it did either. Jacqueline, how did you feel about the film?
It was very intense for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I gotta say. It was, you know, like the other gentleman was saying, you know, when you have people in that situation during that period of time, and you really don't know because you're here in the States, and then when you see something like this, it kind of puts you in that mind frame of, you know, like what they went through. Even if it was fake and even if it wasn't true, you can just imagine what they went through. So it was intense. All the bullets and all that, and the bombs, all that was just very intense.
And Napur, how did you feel about the film?
I think it's emotionally exhausting.
Yeah. That seems to be a common theme amongst us all tonight.
I'm tired.
And then lastly, Camillo, how did you feel about it? No? Okay.
Muted.
Oh, sorry, and I forgot Mike. Mike Summers, did you want to chime in there real quick about your thoughts, initial thoughts on the film? No? Okay. So yeah, well, let's just get to the questions and we'll go through all the details, you know, as we move through the hour. The very first opening scene of the film, they had that graphic up on the screen. The rush of battle is often a potent and lethal addiction, for war is like a drug. I'm curious about everybody's thoughts on that quote itself.
I think it's very true. The people I know who've been to war and gone back for another tours of duty, it was an addiction. The endorphin rush of being there. I don't understand it, but I think that's a true statement.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, and no offense to those of you who, you know, didn't serve or have not been in combat, but it is a rush. I'm not so sure I would say that it's like a drug. I was quite happy to come home, to be honest. But obviously, we saw at the end of this film, Sergeant James, he was not happy to be home. And a lot of veterans feel that. You come back from, all this excitement, all this intensity. And then not only that, but the camaraderie as well that you build with everybody you're serving with. And then you come home and none of that is there anymore. Your whole world is stripped away, for good or for ill. And that was really a visceral experience at the end of the film, I thought. And I was just talking with our director, Chris Kolakowski, about that the other day. But we'll get to that a little bit more. But yeah, it's when you leave those situations, you do feel like you're missing something. A part of you is just not with you anymore.
I think some context of that for that quote as well kind of would add to an understanding of it. It's from Chris Hedges, and it comes from a book he wrote called titled "War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning," and I think that title of the book itself explains has links in with that quote, and particularly with the way the movie ends with James coming off the transport back to Vietnam, back to Iraq for the another 365 days.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on that quote real quick before we move on?
I agree, it's spot on.
Sorry, what was that, Travis? You agree?
I agree with it. It is right on. And the only caveat I would add to it would be that there you matter to somebody. You feel more than just another number when you come back here.
Yeah.
Guys are counting, people are counting on you. You matter to somebody. Back here, you feel like another number.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Like I've said before, I thoroughly enjoyed, my time in Iraq. I went through in the 90s, not in the 2000s. So it was certainly a far different experience. But still, I still think fondly upon my time over there almost every single day. And if I was a young man, I would go and do it again. Absolutely. I'm not a young man anymore. And so I don't think my body could physically take it. And I know the Army wouldn't have me back. I couldn't even pass a PT test nowadays, I'm sure. But it's an experience that you don't get anywhere else. And I don't even know really how to explain it. It's something that you have to really experience and be there. And then like Travis said, when you come back, what you feel afterwards is it's hard to cope with sometimes. And we see that a lot with our Iraq veterans and our Afghanistan veterans now. There's a lot of these guys that have come back that just, they want to be back over there. And I think we saw that in Vietnam too. And we've seen that in some of the films that we've watched as well. You see Vietnam veterans go back and stay in Vietnam. That's where they live for the rest of their lives, because that is where they associate their being with. They spent a good deal of time there. They lost friends, they made friends, they spilled blood. And you're I don't want to say wedded to these areas or these situations, but you certainly feel a connection that you're not going to get anywhere else.
There was really quick. I mean, for me, I explained it to some people it was easier being in Iraq in the middle of the war than it is being back home. In Iraq, I had one thing to worry about: not dying. Here, bills, food, laundry, all this stuff. There, it was a whole lot simpler.
That's actually a really interesting point. I had never even thought of it that way. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it that way either, but that's a very interesting point. You're right. Your only mission is to stay alive, keep your buddies alive. But like you said, back home, you have all these other concerns. You got to make sure that you keep your job, you pay your bills, you got family to take care of, you got kids to take care of. You have other duties, shoveling snow. If you're in the Madison or even in the Wisconsin area, you're shoveling snow today and going to be doing so all weekend. And these things you don't have to worry about while you're over there. You just have to worry about yourself and those around you. That's a very interesting point, Travis. I like that.
Given the military's recruiting problems, they might take you back, Eric.
You know, if they could just scratch the PT test for me, I'll go. That's fine. I don't want to have to run anymore. I don't want to run.
But in regard to Travis's point, the thing about survival is, I think, you know, it's the thing that concentrates your attention. You know, sort of like they talk about a hanging will concentrate your attention. You know, the need for survival will concentrate your attention. You come back to the States, survival is not an issue really. So then,
Yeah.
so there's nothing really to concentrate your attention, and you've got all these dispersed issues that Travis talks about.
Yeah, and Napur brought up a good point too. Deer hunter. You know, we see the same thing in that film, and we might include that next year. We have not included it yet on purpose. That film for me is a very emotional film to watch. And I think, Chris, that might be on your list of greatest films you'll never see again either.
Yeah.
It really pulls a lot out of you watching these guys go through what they did. But it's kind of the exact same thing. When you come back, what do you have? You know, and I don't want to belabor that point though, because we will get to it later on. I kind of want to move along a little bit and talk some about this film. So we have the initial scene with Staff Sergeant Thompson, also with Sanborn and Eldridge, and you know they're defusing this bomb. This is when Staff Sergeant Thompson dies. But and this is where I start to get a little nitpicky. The meat vendor with the phone, he's obviously the guy who's going to signal this IED to blow up. They have eyes on him, they have guns on him, but nobody is taking any shots. Why?
Well, I wasn't sure about Eldridge, whether he had enough experience there to know why he should be taking a shot. As for the others, I don't know.
I mean, that right from the get-go, that just kind of, it didn't set me off of the movie, but it really made me pay a little more attention to the technical aspects of it. What I was going to do today, I was going to look and see who the military advisor for that film was as well. I failed to do that. I will look that up afterward. But there's just a lot of small things like that that really kind of irritated me. And that straight from the beginning was one of them. You know, I know a lot of guys who served in Iraq, and that shot would have been taken. You know, he's backing away. He's very suspicious looking. He's got this phone in his hand. He's not going to put it down. They're in a very dangerous spot. He's within close proximity to the IED. That shot would have been taken. He would have been put on the ground. Travis, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that trigger should have been pulled. But the one thing I would add to that, being there during that time period, because it was 04 to 05, correct?
Yeah, the movie was supposed to be based in 04, yeah.
Okay, so when I got in country in 04, I had the ROE change on me 4 different times before I left in a year. So that might have been a part of it, because the ROEs changed so much while you were there.
And what Travis is talking about, sorry, I'll just interrupt you. ROE is rules of engagement. It's
right.
You know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do while you are, you know, outside the wire, like Travis said. How you conduct yourself amongst the civilian population and how you're supposed to protect yourself amongst the civilian population. Sorry, Travis, go ahead.
And this is I know this is gonna sound very, very crass, but when I left in 05, where I was in northern Iraq, it got to the point where you pretty much had to have a lawyer standing next to you to ask them, can I fire? Because it got so gray and hazy and rules overlapped rules. To try to keep them straight, a regular grunt, to try to keep a regular grunt, a regular infantryman, trying to keep it all straight in the heat of the moment is very, very hard. So there might have been hesitation on that end.
I have a question.
Sorry, go ahead, Sally.
Do those people in that country speak English? Because the guy yells for him to put the phone down in English, and like, I'm thinking, well, would the guy even understand what he's saying?
Some do,
I
very
would
little
imagine.
did. When I was
Go ahead,
there,
Travis.
very little did.
Yeah, it was just odd to me.
even though he's speaking English and he's giving this guy commands in English, he's still got a rifle pointed at him. That meat bender knew what was going on.
Oh, okay.
And you were taught small phrases when you were there. You had what we call smart cards. They're on binders, and you were given certain phrases in Arabic to learn. You know, quick ones like move, get out of the way, hurry up, get down.
Oh, okay.
So that might have been a movie aesthetic for keeping the audience in there with instead of having a subtitle. Might have been. I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, like I said, that's just one part that started to put me off on, you know, the technical side of the film. There's many others, and I won't get up on my soapbox. I still like the film, and I still want to talk about the film. I thought it was done, you know, very well. We see Staff Sergeant Thompson, you know, he dies in that initial scene, and so Sanborn and Eldridge, they get saddled with Sergeant First Class James. How does that dynamic work out initially?
That's a hard pill to follow.
Yeah, it was a phase of adjustment, wasn't it? Yeah.
I wasn't even, for a while there, despite the difference in rank, I wasn't actually sure who was in charge.
Right.
It wasn't like, you know, James comes in and starts exercising command authority or anything like that. He's pretty casual about everything. And so it seemed to me that Sanborn was the one who really was taking on the responsibility for organizing and maintaining the unit. And it isn't until later that I think James starts to try to assert his authority.
And then when I asked the question as well, just kind of following that up, you know, was Sanborn's approach or James's approach more effective than the other one? You know, was there a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, do you think? And when I say do it, I mean the job of going out there and detonating these IEDs and these bombs.
I think they each had their individual job in the movie, that they each had their individual job that they were trying to execute. You know, but in reality, all the little nuances that come in, like the guy coming in saying, you know, where are you from? The guy with the bomb, the guy on the roof, the kids on the roof talking about, shh, there they are. All of that played a interesting part on the weight and balance of getting along. You know, how do we get along? We got to find out who you are to know what you are to know how we are. You know, that's what I was looking at it. It was just like dinner time, you know, when we have family gatherings and everybody ends up here. That whole movie was like everybody coming home. Oh.
so many different personalities clashing and
yeah. No, I mean our military family, it's like, you know, they're trying to get everybody safe through, and the conversations was like, I gotta go. I would leave him here many a times. Poor mom. Yeah.
But in this situation, though, you know, you got to be able to trust the guy next to you. Do you think Sanborn and Eldridge were trusting of James even as the film progressed?
Not at all. Not at all.
And as a matter of fact, we see that flat out from Sanborn as he's, you know, just casually mentions to Eldridge, hey, you know, accidents happen all the time. And James is downrange with this unexploded ordnance.
Think about
shame if something happened again.
I've heard those conversations before. I've heard them.
So have I. Certainly, I don't know. I don't know about you, Travis, but you know, those conversations, we had them, but we weren't terribly serious about them.
No.
But, you know,
and to provide context for you and I with those conversations there, I mean, that's just a dark side of your humanity that comes out to deal with the situation at hand.
Yeah.
It's a survival mechanism for a lot of us.
Yeah, so a soldier's sense of humor, especially on the battlefield, is extremely dark.
Yes.
A lot of things that we say to each other, people would be floored if they heard the way we talk to each other and the things that we say.
That's what I said at the holiday gatherings. I had to go because I was like, no, the military's here. I gotta go. I'll see y'all later. Love you a bunch. I'll be back for dessert.
I understand your statement now better now, Jacqueline. Now I understand your statement better now. I went.
Yeah. We
But,
had all
um,
different times.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
sorry, go ahead,
there's a
Chris.
point where it looks pretty clear that Sanborn actually has contempt for James when he refers to him as his redneck. That he could figure that he knew what this redneck guy was like. And I don't know, maybe that would be a common way to talk to people, but there was a tone in his voice that suggested he really did not like James and he didn't respect him.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You know, he thought he certainly thought he was careless, reckless.
Yeah.
You know, and in those situations where you're in a small unit and you have a very dangerous job, that can lead to disastrous consequences, no doubt. Aside from the dark humor, though, that Travis and I were talking about, I really think Sanborn, given the opportunity, would have, you know, if Eldridge had just encouraged him a little bit, I think he would have gone ahead and done it. Honestly.
In Sanborn's defense, he's been with Eldridge and Sergeant Thompson for almost a year. We joined him at 38 days and a wake up left in country, and now you're getting your bomb tech replaced by some guy you have no idea with. You haven't built a relationship with. You have almost a year of blood in, blood out, and that that's like dog years. A year in combat's like 5 stateside because of the bonding you get to do so quick. And I think Sanborn was looking at it more from the side of, I'm trying to protect Eldridge. You know, I'm trying to make sure we get to where we're supposed to be. You got this new guy coming in, and I got no trust for him at all. And part of that still, like with the redneck part, as much as we have tried to drown it out, there is still flashes of racial stereotypes in the military just by looking at somebody. It's just there. It's going to happen.
And it's not one-sided. It's across the board, for sure.
Yep.
Well, we've seen that in other movies.
Yep.
Talking about Sanborn and Eldridge, and especially when they were with Staff Sergeant Thompson, do you think that they were maybe a little too careless, a little too reckless? They'd gotten a little too maybe, I don't want to say, I'm not coming up with the right word, but they seemed to really let their guard down a little bit and maybe weren't taking things as seriously on, you know, with 38 days left, as opposed to maybe the first few weeks in country. Did you kind of get that impression from them, or was I just reading into it wrong?
I got the impression that Thompson was being particularly casual, and as the senior NCO, I think he would have been setting the tone for how the other people were going to be reacting around him.
Yeah, and I didn't include Thompson in there because he didn't last through that scene, but certainly, you know, that units, you can include them all together for sure. Anybody else?
I think complacency did fall in. They gotten so used to each other's movements that, hey, this is just how it goes, you know. And I think they let down the guard a little bit, I think.
So was the introduction of Sergeant First Class James, was that a benefit to them? Kind of maybe to snap them back to reality, do you think?
I think it may have been in too much of an extreme of a snap. Okay. You go from being complacent to this, and there's no relief in there.
Rather than a tap on the shoulder, it was a smack in the face, right?
No buffer.
Yeah. We also talk a lot about symbolism in things as we go through these movies. You know, whether it's the location where they're supposed to be at, or you know, any sorts of things. I found Sergeant First Class James and his cigarettes. And I did ask that question on here. Did anybody notice any symbolism with his cigarettes? If there even can be such a thing.
Well, I thought there were a couple. One was that it kind of tied back to the opening quote about war being an addiction and cigarettes being an addiction. Mm-hmm. The other one was kind of sexual. that he was taking the cigarettes after, often
okay.
after a successful detonation or whatever. And it was just, over.
No, that's an interesting point, Chris. I didn't look at it that way, but I can certainly see, how that would be. After you get done, it's been the stereotype ever since I can remember. You get done with intercourse, you lay back and you have your cigarette, and so relating that to James, I could certainly see that for sure. And Sally's still cracking up.
Chris, that was a good one, Chris. That was.
Sort of symbolism there. What I took out of it was kind of like a security blanket. I have my adult security blanket. I have my sunglasses with me 24/7. They are on my face. Even when it's overcast and rainy or snowy, I still have I do have my cigarettes with me. I am a smoker, but my sunglasses. But it's more of a security blanket than anything else. And that's what I saw with James and his cigarettes. He had to have that one thing to cling on to that was his grounding, and even, after he got done with the mission, or he was in a dark place, or he was hurting mentally, he had that cigarette to go back to. And and maybe as a smoker, I can kind of relate, unfortunately, but that's what I really saw out of it. And I noticed that with the very first scene, when he pulled the cigarettes out, I related completely to that. I knew exactly where he was coming from and why he was doing that. But I like your take on it, Chris. That's a very good take as well. No, I mean, and it's funny, but I think there's a lot of truth there also. We get to the taxi scene where James is trying to defuse this bomb. This taxi blows through all the security points once again. And I think Travis would agree with me on this. That car would have been full of holes. It never would have made its way to James to the point where he had to pull out his sidearm and engage the taxi driver that way. But he does. The taxi driver does back up, and as soon as he gets back to the security points, he's dragged out of the car. We don't know what happens to him, but James says if he wasn't an insurgent then, he is now. And what does he mean by that quote?
He's gonna hate us for what we just did to him.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you shot his car up. You threatened him. You literally put the barrel to his head. And I mean, if he wasn't mad about the United States being there as an occupying force or an invading force, he sure is now. You've done this to him. You've done that to him. I mean, we did our, speaking for myself and for what I was, we did a lot. We did everything we could to stop them from getting into doing that. I mean, I personally have destroyed one taxi cab over there with a truck. I cut it in half when they pulled out in front of me at the intersection. I didn't slow down. I hit the gas even harder and hit the car hard enough it tore it in half. It was all rusty and cruddy. But same thing. If he didn't hate America, he does now because it just destroyed his car. I mean, we have to remember that even though we are walking around in uniforms and guns, we are quote unquote ambassadors. We are showing America that they judge us, to judge the country on how we act. I know it sounds really horrible in the middle of a war because we do some shady stuff, but it is the truth.
It's absolutely the truth.
And I think you can extend that quotation because not only would he be an insurgent or a terrorist now, people around him would be who he would be going back and telling that story to.
Even kids, especially kids.
Yeah, and we talked about this with the killing fields last month. Having this constant civilian population around, it has to make things so difficult. War is already a very delicate and iffy proposition, and to constantly be monitored by the civilian population and like Travis said, judged on what you do. It's got to be. I can't even imagine. You know, we were when I was in Iraq, we were fortunate. I never saw a civilian the whole time. We were always out in the desert. So all of our actions, even though they were, you know, legitimate and warranted, nobody ever was looking over our shoulder to see what we were doing. But when you're in an urban environment like that, you can't help but to be watched constantly and judged. And that's just that just multiplies the difficulty of everything going on for sure.
I had three kids try to pull the rifle off my back while I was there.
It tried to take the rifle off your back.
They were all probably maybe 9 or 10, and it was a game to them. But the insurgents were paying them to take crap from us.
Oh,
And to spin around and have that many kids trying to do that and instinctively go for my pistol because it's the closest thing I had to me because my rifle was slung on my back. And then to hear my buddy in the gun truck turn around with the 50 cal and charge the handle and to watch those kids freeze because they knew what that sound was.
oh yeah.
Then to come back and deal with my niece and nephew at the same age is extremely hard, you know, knowing what I had done while I was gone.
I'm curious, and if this is just kind of like a side question real quick, and maybe there's an answer out there, maybe not. Why did the taxi driver, why did he do what he did? Why did he blow through security? Why did he wait so long to move after he was ordered to move? Why did James have to fire a couple different shots into his car before he actually decided to back up and get out of there? He didn't seem like he was a threat. It didn't seem like there was, you know, some sort of explosive element to the car itself. I'm just, maybe it's just a cinematic element to create that tension, but I don't know if anybody has any better answer.
I thought that was kind of defiance out of frustration.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And I'd just like to go back to this point about, you know, being in an urban environment with all these civilians watching around. I mean, that's one of the big differences in the dynamic we've seen in some of the other movies we've watched, like out of World War II and Korea. You don't have that oversight. You're out in the battlefield and nobody's really watching you other than your comrades and the opposing forces.
Yeah, and like I said, that just amplifies the difficulty. You know, like Travis was saying, you know, when you go outside of the wire, you have one thing on your mind, your mission and your buddies. But when you start throwing in, you know, embedded journalists, civilian population, and then we also saw for the first time, I think for the first time, if I'm not mistaken, mercenaries as well, with Ray Fiennes and his military contractor group that they came across out in the desert. That's I can't understand. I can't understand how those people get in country and get those jobs in the first place. And then that's just really got to muddy the waters as you're trying to accomplish your mission and stay safe. And you have these private contractors out there with virtually no rules, just doing whatever they're assigned to do or whatever they want to do. How is that conducive to success on the battlefield?
It's not. I mean, that was part of the whole debate about the increasing privatization of war. You know, shipping responsibilities off to private firms that are owned by private equity companies whose interest is not in necessarily battlefield success. I mean, you get that sense from that scene where one of the mercenaries shoots those two guys and says it's 500,000 regardless of whether they're dead or alive.
Yeah. It's almost like the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
And he shot him in the back, something that we're not allowed to do. They're a fleeing, tied up enemy. You cannot shoot him in the back according to the rules of war.
So you're just supposed to let him flee?
Yeah, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to try to reapprehend them, but they're running away. Their hands were still tied. That a prisoner of war, you cannot do that. That is a punishable offense.
Did you have any dealings with private military contractors out there, Travis?
Yes, a lot of them were okay. A lot of them were, pardon my language, assholes. Just, but it was the roll of the dice. I mean, some of the guys are prior service. Some of them are vets going back for more money. I mean, I did part my job while I was there. I get paid $32,000 for the year I was there in combat, tax free. I could have done the same job as a PMC, private military contractor, for 160 grand tax free. So I mean, is it real? Yeah, you're getting paid a whole lot more to do the same job, but yeah. So I don't know how, why are you shifted to that when you just leave it with the military? One, for finance, it's cheaper because you're paying us less. But yeah, I mean, I was there when Blackwater was running a lot of things.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the name of the big American company over there. Yeah, that's what it was, Blackwater. Yeah.
Yeah, which is run by the brother of Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education under Trump.
Oh, I didn't
Right.
know that. I didn't know that
Yeah.
the DeVos family was connected to that.
Yep.
But I mean, like I said, some of them were effective and they did their jobs correctly, and but there were some that just didn't care about the rules.
These hours always go by so fast, and we're down to about 15 minutes now. I'm going to kind of move along a little bit and bring in Beckham. Do you think that character was necessary, or at least pertinent to the film? Or do you think that perhaps his character was just in there to make it more closer to 90 minutes than 60 minutes?
There's a lot of those kids on base when you're there. There's a lot of those kids that go back and forth and if you're on a base the whole time, you do get to know some of them. So I mean, I get it from that aspect, and the aspect of when he finds the body, and that they did do that. They would stuff people full of explosives, dogs full of explosives. I mean, that aspect of it is showing how far these people went to do this stuff to fellow Iraqis and to soldiers. But as far as just I don't think it was bad in that sense. But I mean, I don't see any other reason why he was in there, really.
Now that's the first time I've heard that they would really stuff a deceased body with explosives.
I never saw the deceased body, but I was on quote unquote orders from our unwritten rule. If you saw a healthy looking dog, to shoot it. If you saw a unhealthy looking dog, you can let it be. The healthy looking dog had been stuffed full of explosives, and there was a guy waiting to watch it come by you. Because the two biggest things to get to a soldier is a dog and a kid. They would use kids against us. They would strap vests to kids.
That's insane.
There are no rules on how they want to kill us.
I mean, war's an insane project in the first place, but that's just taking it to a whole new level. That I did not know.
Yeah.
And now that you bring that up, I would have been a sucker for the dog in a heartbeat. Yeah. Wow. So after James thinks that Beckham is dead, once he realizes that he's not, that body was not Beckham, and he sees Beckham walking across the base, he just ignores him completely. Why do you think that is? He developed such a rapport with him, and he cared about this kid, to a degree. Why would he just all of a sudden cut him out?
I don't want to cut anybody else off, but I have an answer. But I want to let somebody else answer though.
Jacqueline, did your hand go up?
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Oh, I was just getting ready to say, I don't think he wanted to have that emotion.
Exactly.
I don't think he wanted to have that tie, because he went through it.
Yeah, that very well could be. Jeremy Renner's character pulled me in a few different directions. He didn't seem to go straight through the movie as how do I say this? He seemed to exhibit different traits as the movie went along, depending on how he was supposed to have the audience react. And certainly that's character development. You want that out of your actors. You want them to be able to pull certain emotions out of the audience. And he certainly did, in this instance. I was really surprised. I thought, he would be happy to see that this kid wasn't dead. And I was kind of surprised to just see him ignore him completely. And you're probably right. That's why he did it. He didn't want that attachment, at least not with somebody who was not going to be able to have his back and protect him the way he could protect everybody else. And I don't know. I kind of think the whole Beckham character was just to lengthen the movie out. I think there was some purpose to him being there, but not enough to warrant as much screen time and as much dedication to the script that he got.
And I disagree. I think he played a role. I think he was the guy that showed that Renner's character had a person, a human side, that he wasn't just a machine, that this kid showed that even though it was war, he could feel, and that when he started to feel, gotta stop that. If I feel I can't do my job as effectively. That's just my take on it.
No, and that's, I think everybody else in here would probably mostly agree with you, Sally.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Travis.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree with Sally that I think it demonstrates the humanity that was still in him. I thought that his just disregarding him at the end was really kind of a form of suppressed anger, because preceding that, he had gone through that whole thing, coming back into the wire, getting set down. And I think he subconsciously was blaming Beckham for that anger. And he didn't want to have anything to do with him. I mean, it was sort of a projection kind of thing.
Beckham ended up being a distraction. He was going to lose focus on Beckham, worrying about him and all that in mind, and he would not be able to do his job, and he would end up killing himself and somebody else. So him shoving Beckham away was him refocusing back on his job and his duty. And a lot of us, including me, I've been seeing it. I've been getting help for it. You created a second person to live there that you were. You got rid of everything else, because everything else was a chink in your armor if you didn't maintain your focus to get back home. And I think that, for me, from my perception, that was what Beckham was to the movie. That was that distraction, showing that for maybe it was, what's it for Sally, everybody else, it's what you guys got to, but I think for anybody that watched it from the military side, that's what we saw.
Okay. No, it's excellent points all the way around.
And sorry I cut you off, Chris.
We only got just a couple minutes left. I want to talk about some of the filmmaking aspects of this. Certainly what we got from the initial, conversation about how we felt about the movie. Sally brought it up, Jacqueline brought it up. I think Napur brought it up too. There was this anxiousness. It was a really tough movie to watch because you were just so on edge the entire time. This was done on purpose, especially with Barry Ackroyd, the cinematographer. They, if you noticed, you moved with the bomb tech from the Humvee to the site. You were there with them the entire time. And they also shot this film using multiple cameras so that every scene, all angles were covered. And Catherine Bigelow said that she did not leave out any footage that she shot while they were going through the filming. So it was very purposeful to make it anxious like this. And the question that I did ask was, do you think that they're successful in this approach? Obviously, many of you do. But do you think that there's maybe another way that they could have done it that would have brought about the same feeling and the same emotion?
And from my perspective, no, I think since it's a war movie and I'm not exposed to military at all, they needed to capture me. They needed to make me feel something in a visceral feeling, and that's what it did.
Okay, no, that might be the quote of the year, Sally. They had to make me feel something, and that's what they did. That's excellent. I'm sure if Catherine Bigelow and the rest of her crew were watching this, they would be jumping for joy. You could take all your Academy Awards. We got the emotion out of the audience that we wanted. We were able to put you in the place that we wanted to put you and deliver this the way we want to deliver it to you. And that's what filmmaking is. That's what you want to do. That's what Tarantino does every single time he gets behind that camera or that scene or that set. He has a very specific reaction that he wants from his audience, and he goes to great lengths to get it, as does Catherine Bigelow.
I thought that the camera work created a real sense of uncertainty in each scene. You just didn't know what was going to, in a sense, you didn't know what was going to happen. You felt like it was almost sort of found footage from like another soldier who had been there and was just moving the camera around to whatever happened to catch his attention. And I thought it worked. I thought it was pretty effective in terms of, as Sally said, capturing that, getting that emotional reaction.
Well, I mean, certainly, it won Best Picture, Best Editing, and Best Director. So I think the Academy agrees with what you guys are saying. They were very effective in that. Excuse me. That was part of the low budget status of this film, was that they kind of wanted to make it kind of like, found footage. It really didn't come across to me as much as it has in maybe some other films, but I could see where that intent was coming from. And I think they were successful as well. I was on the edge of my seat pretty much the whole movie also.
I think one piece of footage that would have been kind of cool for the audiences to see would have been from a POV out of the bomb tech helmet, because it's very hard. I mean, your senses of everything is cut off pretty hard. Maybe not doing a whole lot of film from there, but just at least something when he's walking or trying to manipulate stuff, because it's and you have less hearing, you have it's hot, you're breathing, just something to show you how much of stress he's going through just wearing that suit, going through his day-to-day operations, because it sucks. I've tried them out. It just sucks.
Last thing I want to talk about from the filmmaking aspect, and this is something that we've brought up over the past couple of meetings, but never really hit it very hard, is the filmmakers deliberately used very little score in this film, very little music, and focused rather on different forms of sound. And I think that was evident throughout, certainly when we had explosions, but even aside from explosions, footsteps in the sand, cars moving, they just really tried to bring out all the elements of what it would be like in this situation in a city like this. And I'm just curious, did you find that use of sound? I mean, obviously this is a very suspenseful movie, and they bring that through the cinematography, the directing, and the acting. But do you think the sound aspect of it, did you notice it at all? Was it an element that was also effective and made you a little more anxious?
Yeah, it made me really anxious, because when I saw that question, I was like, so what music would they have used? Da, 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 da. It was like, no, the bombs and the guns were enough. We didn't. I think that if it had a musical score, it would have taken away from the intensity of us sitting at the edge of our seat going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's no musical score on a real battlefield. So using the actual sounds, I think it was very effective here. In fact, it kind of caught me up at the end when they started rolling the credits and there was actually music.
It's much like the movie The Quiet Place. I don't know who else has ever seen that.
Yeah.
By, was it Josh Krasinski, right? And anyway, there is no score at all. It is all actually quiet. So once you hear the sounds come in, it does do that reaction, because the quiet can be absolutely frightening, especially in combat. You know how the saying goes, when it's really quiet, you know, something's about to go wrong. That's what gets you that your blood flowing in that. I mean, they did a really good job with that on having absence of sound, and on the score side.
Yeah, and you really don't see a whole lot of filmmakers exploit the absence of sound, or at least from a score standpoint. You know, and I think Catherine Bigelow, she did a really good job in Zero Dark 32. She kind of took that same approach. There was a little more of a score in that film, but she really focused on, you know, bringing out the natural elements. You know, when they're in the black sites, or when they're, you know, especially what really struck me in Zero Dark 30 was the sound of the helicopters at the end, as they're going through the mountain passes and on their way to the Bin Laden compound. Just that muffled rotor sound of those helicopters. I could hear it right now, just like it is in the movie. That really sticks with me. And that's one of the things that I like from Catherine Bigelow, is she does kind of take an outside of the box approach to how she addresses the audience. And I think she did a really good job with this as well. I always ask this last question. I've got many other questions to ask, but like I said, this hour always goes by so fast. Who was your favorite character and why? Chris, for some reason, you have replaced Sally as first up on my screen here. So we'll start with you.
I thought it was a tough choice, frankly, because this was really kind of an ensemble piece of work. But I kind of liked Eldridge, and particularly the scene where he's taken off in the helicopter and he really lets loose on James. I thought that kind of captured the sense of frustration and anger that had probably been building up in his character, that he kind of suppressed throughout and then just let it out at the very end. So I thought the way he handled that character was perhaps as impressive as anything in the film.
All right, Sally, how about you?
I really don't have a favorite character in this movie. This is strange.
It was kind of hard to, you know, unless you're looking at, you know, maybe Sanborn or James, like Chris said, it was more of an ensemble cast. And
That's
so
what
I found it a little hard to pinpoint one as well.
I would say an ensemble would be my favorite. I can't come up with one soldier that jumped out at me this time.
Sure, okay. Jacqueline, how about you? Who's your favorite character?
I like the Three Musketeers, Sanborn, Eldridge, and James. I liked them. They played their parts very well.
All right.
I enjoyed them.
Travis, how about you?
It was definitely an ensemble one, but if I had to pick one that I would relate to the best would be James. I mean, I got to that point where while I was there, I stopped wearing my helmet on a lot of the stuff because where I was at, if somebody was going to get me, it was going to be a sniper. I mean, the helmet wasn't going to do anything. You just reach a point where you're just like, you know what? I'm either going to come back home or I'm not. I mean,
it is what it is. Yeah, exactly right. I went a little bit outside the box. I have two that I'd like to point out. First, Colonel Reed, played by David Morse. Very small part, but I just thought he played that so quirky and so well, especially when James diffuses all of those bombs and he comes, you know, back to the Humvee and Colonel Reed's standing there and he calls him a wild man. Whoa! And he's just, I didn't know how to take him in that. I didn't know if he was being serious or if he was being sarcastic.
I didn't either.
I really liked his role in it. And then also, I'm always a big Ralph Fiennes fan. I really was surprised to see him in this, even if it was only for a few minutes before he got taken out. But I always like to see him in films. He's one of my favorite actors all the way around. So if I had to pick one, I would say it would be David Morse as part of Colonel Reed. It was just such a quirky and odd character. It really stuck with me.
So the point where, real quick, Eldridge forgot the shrink's name that died at the end.
Cambridge.
Doc.
Yeah, Doc.
Cambridge.
Yeah,
it was Cambridge. Yeah.
Eldridge's reaction was very, very well done, I believe. I mean, just the sheer shock of he was just here. You know, that utter confusion that sets in after something like that happens, I thought was captured very well.
You know, I was often wondering if Eldridge was just pulling our leg the whole time. And it wasn't until that scene, Travis, that I realized that he wasn't. But up until then, I was kind of casting a little bit of doubt on his sincerity to all the issues that he was having. I wasn't sure if he was just messing with us or not. We have one more virtual event the museum does for 2022, and it's going to be this coming Tuesday is our last trivia night of the year. So we hope to see everybody out for that. But if we don't, then we will see you hopefully in January for our next movie night. I've been wanting to put this movie up for a while. I've kind of hesitated, but I think in 2023 we're going to see some films that I've wanted to look at, but just haven't yet. So right straight up in January is a 1988 film called The Beast about a Russian tank crew in Afghanistan. It is a fantastic movie. It is, as a tanker, it is probably one of the best depictions of armored warfare outside of maybe Fury. But this movie is fantastic. There will be some names that you'll recognize, some faces you'll recognize, especially one of the Baldwin brothers is in it. But it's a treat. It's a really good film. I hope everybody really enjoys it. I can't wait to talk about this one in January. So The Beast from 1988, that's what we're going to be looking at in January. And if I do not see you at trivia on Tuesday, I hope everybody has a very happy and healthy holiday season.